So thank you, Daniel, for your contribution. Now we can go to the questions. So Francois, you had a question before.
Yes, thank you to all of you three for your presentations. My question is for Heikki. Actually, it's a few questions, but they are very specific and very targeted. They're about the setting of the experiment. First, before the experiment started, I heard that there was this idea that the experiment would be started in one specific region in Finland, which has had a big problem of unemployment and poverty. And I was wondering if the applications came from all over the country or if they came from only one region in Finland. Another question about this. The selection, the applicants were selected randomly among those who applied, but is there any way to take into account the fact that people are applying voluntarily and how there might be a bias according to that? And then the last question is about employment. Well, the idea is to see how employment levels will be affected by the experiments, and I guess it will certainly be positive, but then what about the evaluation of the quality of the jobs, and what about the evaluation of the kind of jobs in terms of whether they are part-time or full-time jobs, so basically the quality of the jobs rather than the amount of jobs only.
Thank you. So there are 2,000 people in the experiment group, and they were chosen among those who were receiving flat rate unemployment compensation on the last day of last year. So that's where those people were selected. And the size of the sample was decided by using some power calculations. Power calculations indicate, in this case, which kind of effect you would be able to detect. And I can't really remember what was the size of the effect, but they in any way they deemed that this group of people in the experiment group is big enough to detect even a quite small change in employment. There was some discussion on emphasizing a couple of regions. We have some regional experiments on different kind of active labor market policies, but not on basic income. So it's a national sample. When it comes to quality of jobs, we don't really know about the quality, subjective poverty. I mean, how people perceive the jobs. What we can see is the income, what they are getting from the jobs. And I guess we probably will be able to study the length of employment, and probably, or it's possible, let's say it's plausible that we can also look into the type of contracts, but I'm not quite sure about that.
Klaus, first Klaus.
Yes, thank you. I referred to the last line of your presentation. If you have said convincing the actors, and the last line was proposal to the European Commission, and that is exactly what we will do. That we propose a new European Citizens Initiative for Europe. And by the way, I want to give you this information which you perhaps know already. There is a consultation procedure at the moment from International Democracy about the change of the ECI regulation until 16th of August, and there's a nice proposal how to change these ECI regulations, and so we are very convinced that with a good proposal on the nice new ECI regulation we will have success in this direction. Thank you.
Progress from Turkey, and then Stanislas.
I think these experimental studies are very dangerous. The reason is, I think some people may judge the concept based on the results of these experiments. In fact, these experiments are not real experiments. First of all, the funding side is totally irrelevant. I mean, from a governmental budget or from a EU budget, if you receive certain amount of money and distribute it to a certain number of people, I don't think that it's that meaningful. If it's 2 years, 3 years, or 4 years, still not meaningful, because they know that at the end of the 2 years, this will stop. It's like a scholarship for a student for 2 years' time or 3 years' time. So my belief is, if there are some results which we are not happy with, and maybe these will be used as an excuse by the politicians not to realize the concept. So I think this is more than an experimental issue, it's a political issue, and it's a political choice. And of course there's a political risk, but it should be handled that way. And in the meantime, I mean the people who are trying to realize this concept are losing time and energy and motivation, and it's becoming like chewing gum. Okay, we will make an experimental study, wait for 2 years, see the difference, etc., etc. For example, one part of the basic income is that if people are not happy with their current lives, they would like to improve themselves. Maybe they would like to stop working and go to a higher education or somewhere else. Maybe that period will not be enough. Or maybe, I mean, quite dangerous, my feeling, this experimental studies. And I think it's, yeah, maybe the correct word is dangerous. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now Stanislas.
Well, in fact, I exactly wanted to address this point. Of course, the experiments that are ongoing in Finland and also in Netherlands have been, downsized in their ambitions, and then they have become something very modest. And there's been so much noise around Finland that I expect as well that there will be a lot of deception when the results come out. But paradoxically, it doesn't matter how much we dislike those experiments because they are already underway, and to cope with the potential future disaster of those results, the best solution is actually that we need more pilots, because regardless of what we do, this is already happening, and the results will be interpreted by our opponents the way they want to interpret. So the best position for us is actually to promote more pilots so that we can have a more balanced picture, that we can compare the different results, compare the intentions, the objectives that were put forward by the different projects, and that we can try ourselves to raise the expectations of those pilots and raise the standards and make them better. At least, I think as a matter of principle, we should make this effort, because at least then, further in the process, we can tell the public, this is not our fault. Because right now the biggest risk is that we are going to be accused that, oh, you see, this basing on my ID, you see how it was, we are going to have baffled comment like that. So the best way to protect our legitimacy in the debate is to be really more ambitious with those pilots and make it clear to the policymakers that the finished one is not the one we want. And hopefully manage to get other pilots. And actually, I think it's a really low-hanging fruit. I mean, even the new commissioner on social affairs, she's made several public statements saying that the commission is going to monitor the Finnish experiments, and she seems to be in favor of a minimum income as well. I don't think it would be such a hurdle to get a meeting with her. Make it public that there was a meeting, raise the pressure. I don't think it should be the end of the process. We should get a meeting with the Commission as soon as possible on this issue, and then create the pressure with actors. I mean, in parallel, but I don't think we need to wait, basically. I think it's a low-hanging fruit. It would be good for the Commission to do some kind of publicity, to show that they are doing some stuff. If you talk about, social protection, they are really they're actually quite frustrated at the Commission because they can't really do much because of the competence issue. But actually this they can do. But it's up to us to make them realize this, because I think that the commissioners, the people at the Commission are not the most creative people, so it's our job to give them some nice ideas. So yeah, I think I completely understand your point, but I think it's our job to spin it around and to turn the narrative. Otherwise, yeah, you'll be right, huh? And we are doomed. Anyway, I talked enough. Thanks.
Now, Valeria.
Well, I would like to join Anya and Ali. I'm very critical of pilots as well, and I don't agree with Stanislas. I don't think we could raise an awareness or get better results with more pilots. We need a real basic income in one country. That would be something, not the pilot, better one. Then I think we should start with asking why we still need basic pilots if we were first convinced already just from the logic the benefits of basic income. And then we've got so many arguments from partial or 1/3 of substance. So why are we still doing it? And you know, I have a really bad answer. You know, I mean, we talk basic income we need because we have like bureaucracy where 3 bureaucrats are sitting on one poor person. What are getting now is we are getting like 3 researchers upon one poor person. So it's like all these professionals in poverty industry are just sweeping aside, going to the search for basic income instead of doing a bureaucratic job. So that's my like point against it, and I don't think we can get a lot of better results. But anyway, before the end of this round, I would like to go back to the Heike presentations, to his last slide, because I was eager to comment on that point. So thank you for now.
Some other comments. So I think first was Ulrich.
Yes, some are arguing that yes, we know that basic income will bring us freedom, justice, ecology, and wealth, and so on. I think this too, but these are all theoretical arguments. If we are honest, we have to admit this, and we have to accept experiments. We don't have to fear the results of experiments. It's clear that it is an experiment and that there are special constraints that must be part of the evaluation. That's clear. But I'm sure, because I'm theoretically sure, that we will have some positive effects. Maybe we have some negative effects, so then we have to discuss why. You have to be honest. Maybe they are due to the constraints, but maybe they are even effects we have to face with a complete basic income. So we have to discuss it.
We have to keep the comments short because there are a lot of people applying.
Yeah, only one remark. The evaluation should be expanded, not only the question what impact on labor market, but the question what impact on wealth and health and so on.
Maybe the effects will be limited because we're not piloting the basic income actually. Okay, now the Finland, I mean.
Uli. I think these pilots are not very useful because there will always come out then a liberal model instead of a full model of basic income. And also there's no security because it's not for the whole life. It's not really security. It makes not people free. They have to work. What I have done, you can't see if they make a useful work or not when the amount is not high enough. And people will be disappointed and they will think basic income we have to capitulate. And if there are any projects, I think it could be only the full, with the 4 criteria, the full basic income, and perhaps only for children. Then we see what happens then to the children if we have pilots. But I would prefer to have it in one country and the full UBI for the whole life.
Barb.
Is this working? Okay. Yeah, I'm going to sit on the fence here, okay, because I actually think there's a way that I think that the piloting the idea in one way is like, it's a bit like, and looking at all these little, either macroeconomic effects or the effects on people, it's a bit as though giving money to people is like giving them smallpox, all right? So I don't want to deny that, all right? And I definitely would want to go to a full basic income somewhere as soon as possible. However, all right, what I do think is useful about talking about pilots and about looking at what the results are is that for us in terms of basic income, unconditional basic income Europe, I think it gives us a tool to actually scrutinize what the European Union is actually spending money on. I think that's a very useful thing. I think it's useful for us to be able to pose an alternative use for that money. And most of these programs would not pay a full basic income or a full euro dividend. But I think it's very useful in terms of saying, well, right, okay, if you really want to innovate, let's innovate, all right? Let's, it's a tool for us to go to the European Union and say, look, all right, you're spending this on nonsense. I mean, I'm a welfare worker, and I know very well, like the European Social Fund, it's basically spent on wasting people's time. All right, I know that's not that's not the headline that you see there, and it's supposed to be all very successful. There have been other studies saying it's very unsuccessful, but I would rather see that money used to help pilot a basic income, even if it's piloting. I would like to see a full basic income pilot in a particular locality. All right, I think that would be much more useful than the kinds of experiments that are coming up at the moment. So, okay. Sorry to sit on the fence, but
thank you.
I think that it can. Yeah, sorry, I'll stop there.
Okay, Daniel.
Okay. Excuse me, I'm going to be a little bit polemic. I mean, I was born in a country where the social economic system was run by a small minority who knew exactly what's best for everyone, and the whole experiment called socialism didn't really work out. I don't think that we can go about basic income like that. We need convincing. We are in a democracy. We need to convince people. We need to convince decision makers. And as much as I agree with Valeria and Uli that it would be, of course, great if we could have basic income in a country just like that, how do you imagine this to happen? Politicians are risk avoiders. Ali, you talk about risk. Politicians nowadays in modern democracies are risk avoiders. They prefer not to test anything that can easily backfire or so. So that's why if you have some, you don't necessarily need an experiment that gives you all the indications what effects basic income can have. But if you have a sufficient amount of positive effects, that helps you a lot to win this public debate. And I agree also with Ulrich. We also, I mean, we should be also confident enough about our idea to not to fear those reality tests. And the best way, Ali, to make sure that those experiments do not backfire is actually in getting involved in defining them and have clear criteria also, so that we can say afterwards, if it turns out not the way that we would like it to be, that we have strong arguments to say in the public debate, no, sorry, these kind of experiments are not valid basic income experiments.
Okay, thank you. The girl with glasses. Sorry, I don't know your name.
It's Nazla. Okay, so I'm new here, so like, excuse me if I'm wrong, but it kind of feels weird that before, like, we talked about pilots, all we talked about was funding, how we get it, do we get it from taxation of people or taxation of ecological pollution, etc. But right now we're talking about an external money coming from EU or another organization, doesn't matter, but which won't be continuous, and it is not the continuous funding that will fund a real program. And I think that's really problematic, because if the money did grow on trees, no government would be against giving their people money to get more votes, or no people would be not convinced to get more money. The people are, I think, the only argument against basic income rises from the fact that it requires some kind of source, which is either taxation or something. And I think anyone who's against basic income isn't against the fact that people will receive money, but that the money will come from somewhere. And I think as long as the pilot tests take that money from the EU, it's not really measuring anything, because the money will, of course, benefit the people. It's not the problem. It's not that. That's not the problem. The problem is, I think, funding, which is not measured in these pilots.
Really nice comment. I think Heike now. Okay.
Yeah, I certainly agree that the experiments are dangerous in the sense that so many advocates will be disappointed because the thing is that basic income is a simple idea, and many people have different kind of conflicting expectations. But when you start actually implementing the idea, that's when you define what you mean by basic income, and that's really a big step. I think Jürgen de Wispeler has done an excellent job. He's a Belgian researcher studying the practical questions around basic income. And the thing is that with these pilots, we are first time able to create some sort of path dependency. Like in the Finnish experiment, we have a system where we pay basic income. Even though this first step is really crucial and it's really difficult, how you can guarantee that everybody who is entitled to basic income is actually getting the basic income. Now we have the computer system, and that experiment is creating some sort of path dependencies. So if the politicians want to decide that we're going to continue, so we have the system at place already. And the basic income is also very complex in the sense that you have to define how basic income is working together with other features of social insurance system. And the system it looks like the way it looked in this picture, picturing the maze. And I guess we also have to keep in mind that we actually have basic income basically practically in all EU member countries for children, so that's child allowance. And I'm quite sure that we also have basic income for the elderly in terms of minimum pension. And then when it comes to working age people, all the countries, they have a minimum income schemes, social assistance, it's called social assistance most normally. And then the big question is unconditionality. That is the big question, unconditionality. And that's something which is at the core of the Finnish experiment. Does it really work out, this unconditionality, or not? Because there has been a huge trend towards more means testing, stricter entitlement criteria, workfare, practically in all EU countries. And that's also the current policy in the European Union, in the Commission. So if we can change this thinking through these experiments, I think it's a really big step. And I also totally agree with Daniel when you said that of course we can think about revolution and introducing universal basic income through a revolution, but that's not something which I would advocate for. So we need to argue through democratic process, and we need to find a majority of people who would believe in this idea. And it's most difficult to argue against economists and civil servants. And for that purpose, I think the experiments are useful.
Thank you for this really valid argument. So Aurelia? Wrap up, or what do you think, Sebastian? One more?
Yeah, I think she was before Matt. Okay, just also maybe we should take into account the political culture of each country. And I think that France, we have a culture of pilots, and it's rare to implement such a huge public policy without pilots. And the lessons we have from the minimum income experiment is that it was not long enough. It was only 1 year, and it was implemented very fast after. And if it had last 3 years, we would have seen the pervert effects such as poverty trap. So I mean, as long as we take enough time, that we have a big enough sample, that we vary the diverse pilot, for us it will be fine, because we have this culture in France of pilots. So at some point we have to take into account how the politicians work, and we have to adjust to them.
Thank you. Felicita.
About the experiments, they've always been social experiments. You remember House of the Cards series, when President Underwood says, well, jobs for all, it's an experiment. If it doesn't work, we'll make another experiment. But about the Finnish one, what I think it's good that in that way that really European institutions are following what is happening. For me, perhaps it could work better if these 2,000 people were randomly chosen.
So they were randomly chosen?
Yeah. Unemployed. If they would be, let's say, from 18 to 60 or whatever, the certain age group, randomly chosen. So that means unemployed, employed, students, whatever. So that I think then the different effects in this 2-year period could be studied other way. But what I liked from your presentation just at the end, when you proposed at the EU level, it's basic income for children. Now, as far as I know, in many EU member states, there is a universal child benefit, not in mine. Correct me if I'm wrong. I have one child, but I never used any supplement or so, because I did not want to ask for it. It's means testing supplement for children. And as far as I know, it is different for parents, if parents earn more or less. It is also different, I think, if you are firstborn or fifthborn. And I don't agree with this. I think children should be treated equally as individuals. And this something, when it already exists in some member states, maybe that would be easier to persuade European institutions to perhaps start with this age group. Of course, we have to keep in mind that usually the guardians of these benefits are parents or guardians. So this, I think it would be an idea that maybe could catch some ground at European level.
Thank you. Yeah, just one more comment, okay? Valeria, you can then maybe when you will start speaking, okay?
I think we have to find more solidarity between the people. And these projects are not good for this. It's only a trap from the others. We didn't need to have pilots if we should have less taxes. We didn't have any pilots by introducing Mindestsicherung. I don't know if you know the name for it. And we didn't have pilots to save banks. It's only a trap from the liberal people so that they can say, no, we had to stop it and it wasn't good. And nobody comes to know, besides of us, comes to know that isn't really what we want when they are doing pilots. And therefore, I'm very, very much against.
Thank you. So one more comment, really short one, and then we'll go to the presentation because we are extremely late. It's Friday afternoon, just to remind everyone.
Oh, okay. Yeah, hi. I've tried several times to get the word there. I just want to say that I'm not totally against violence. For instance, in Norway, we have had media attention for first time after the Finnish pilot came, even on the national TV channel. So it is a very, very good way to promote the idea, even if we struggle to explain it in, you know, what it is really about afterwards.
The promotion through the pilot costs 20 million euro. Is this rational, if this is just the promotion?
Ask me if it's rational to, I don't know any about well, you have other benefits also, this, you know, so I don't know what to say about that. But what makes me a bit worried about the development with the pilots now is the new pilots in Netherlands, which has so many conditions. They have 3 different kind of models. One is you get social benefit and nothing more, you know. It's just you just don't get any push from the government. You are free to do whatever you want, you know. That is how the social benefit was for everyone just 10 years or 15 years ago, you know. So we are going backwards. And we have also this other 2 other different models. This is one where they actually get extra help, extra push and motivation to get into work. These people who is on social benefits. And we have the 3rd one, which is more interesting and more similar to the Finland model. And there they get this social benefit. And if they get work, income from work, they get 50% tax on the income. So they have this possibility to, you know, get out of this. But what I was thinking, and if we should promote basic income pilots, we should actually be more bolder and go forward. You know, not this is like we are, you know, on the defense on the field. You know. We should go forward and promote this idea how it's supposed to be and in our society, and try to get this accumulative effects out of it. So then it can be. I think we should go for that if we should go for pilots. Okay, thanks.
Okay, Valeria. just finish your argument from before.
Can I get, Heike, your presentation? I mean, what I would like to say is, I agree again with Anya, and I have to say that when I was invited to comment on Finland experiment, I said it's not basic income experiment, it's only what we call it in Slovenia active policy for employment, and even it's not active, because what they are searching for is if government just gives you money and look what happens, it's less work from the government and hoping for the best. And it's not only hoping for the best, it's also like limiting this 300, so people will play around this 100, and also it's social dumping on employment market. So it's so many bad things that I'm really, I'm searching for the nice word, because this experiment uses name of universal basic income. It's basic. It's basic. The last. Yes, this one. This one. Yes. No, with the child benefit at the end. This one. Yes. If I may say so, I've heard for the first time about Finland approach to basic income when Branko met them in Vienna. And from the first moment, then I sensed that Finland and Slovenia have very much the similar approach or thought paradigmatic approach. First of all, they were always very modest about the level of basic income, and that is something similar. But right now I would like to say that in Slovenia we last year made a coalition with civil organizations, about 30 or even 50 of them, about coalition against poverty, with the statement that we will force and stay behind universal basic income for children. So again, its connections, the similar arguments and the similar conditions. Then I would like to go to my subject, which is again debate on EU minimum social standard. It's like searching for a common ground concerning a basic income model on European level. Now I would like to go to my presentation. Oh, I have one really important comment as well. Have you read the OECD basic income paper, which was produced this summer? What I want to say is, I read it. Maybe not very, very thoroughly, but more precise than the majority of comments. What was said in newspaper about this OECD study was exactly opposite what they found out. That's why I'm saying I don't give about pilots, because even if we will get a good results, the media and the commentators will just make it opposite. So what's the purpose of it? Okay, that's actually the point, but also now I'm going to my presentation, which is connected with OECD study. You may think I'm like I am, I don't know how to say it. No, I'm very proud of myself, because OECD this year put an end or convinced or showed that my proposal of basic income 7 years ago was a good one, and they came to the same conclusions. I would like to say which conclusions are they. First of all, if we are talking about partial basic income, about 50% of median income, we can finance it in a budget-neutral way. That's the point. Also, what OECD showed here is that for all the 4 countries, for the majority of people, that would be better system than it's now, with the same amount of money. So, now I have like encouragement to show you how I think that we should pursue further. And first of all, also OECD did the same. They asked us what we have to start thinking about basic income, how we have to start thinking when we do basic income model. Of course, there are always basic income principles, and then are additional questions, additional criteria, a lot of connected with the context of the national country. I presented this model like for a few times already in this surrounding, but nevertheless, what I always said is, in my model, I try to solve out not the 4 conditions, universality, individuality, equality, and so on, but 14, 20 conditions. The most important of it is that basic income should not worsen the position of the most vulnerable. And the second one is, it has to be better for the majority. Because if it's not better than the old one, why bother? That's the first point. But then the next points are, if we, oh, I'm sorry, I thought I have the, so if we agree about these criteria, we have to discuss further on the other criteria. We have to start on asking ourselves, can we in Europe, European countries, make some more common grounds, more consensus about who is getting basic income, only citizens or not, residents as well, equal for all, adults and children as well. And then we should start talking about the basic income level. As I said, I would start with partial basic income, because not only that it's budget neutral, that it's good for a majority, all the pilots showed us how even basic income, which is not full, can benefit the society. So these are all arguments, and now it's only the starting point that in our organization we start talking beyond the 4 principles. We have to start talking, searching for the common grounds in 20 different conditions and principles. I just made the one proposition. I would like to make it. It's the Slovenian formula for calculating basic income level. I believe it's very straightforward. it's like average of one social assistance for single person, half of poverty threshold, 1/3 of netto average wage, average of it. It shows that it's very close to calculation of OECD. I did this for OECD countries and EMU. This is Euro Monetary Union. I would like to maybe that you check out how much basic income we could get if we would use Slovenian formula. I believe it's bigger amount for Finland, for instance. I would like to say also that for Slovenia, it's a bigger amount than its current social assistance. But nevertheless, what I would like to show you the result of my model. It's very complicated. It's not easy made, even if you don't have micro-simulation model. But still, we would come to conclusions that in these circumstances, it's possible that for the starting point, for the first step, we cannot go for the full basic income with all the conditions completed. As I said, I have like 12 out of 14 basic principles served. Okay, I'm not going to the poverty level. That's my problem. It's also my problem that I was not completely unconditional. The problem with the European level, if we compare it, is that I proposed the same amount for the children. I don't know that any country have the same proposal. Of course not. Usually they have half of it or something like that. So there are some differences, but we should start talking practical. Like Heike said, when you start talking how to introduce basic income, what's the level, then you see on which side of basic income you are. Thank you.
So Francois, we have 10 minutes, so keep your comments short. So Francois, first comment or question.
Thank you, Valeria, for your presentation. It's just a very small question. What's the rationale behind your three aspects that define the level? You mentioned the amount for a social claimant, a single person, half of the poverty line, and I don't remember what the third one was. Is it because in Slovenia these amounts are fairly low, or what's the rationale behind it? If I take the example of Belgium, if we take the level of the minimum income for a single person, isolated single person, we are already at the level of the poverty threshold, which is 1,100 euros more or less in Belgium, which if that was the amount of a basic income, it would already be amazing.
Well, how I came up with the formula? Well, it was theoretical work of our sociologists who proposed like 1/3 of average wage to follow the common standard of the people. Then our minimum wage or poverty threshold is, it was also the idea of him, but nevertheless we have the problem. Please, if you can check that our netto minimum wage is the same as poverty threshold. And then I went to finding equilibrium, how to make it socially fair. That people who are working 8 hours are not getting the same as the people who are not. That's why I decided to use it like 1/2 of it, because to make it different, and also because it was connected with the social assistance level. Social assistance level is connected with the poverty alleviation. And it's our standard of poverty alleviation, how much we can afford it. So the third part is like indicator, how much countries already using for poverty eradication. So the additional parts are only supplements. But I would like also to show you the picture of different countries. Yes, all Luxembourg, Netherlands, Ireland, Belgium, and Finland already have the bigger social assistance for the single person. What is more argument for the case that they can afford it, basic income, easily. That's all. Did I?
Any other questions? Okay, maybe I have one question. I think that we are sort of running around the definition of basic income, the whole conference or the whole meeting. One of the definitions actually says that, I mean, this is one of the constitutive elements of the definition of universal basic income, that the new system would not worsen the situation of anyone. So you said the majority of the people would be better off, not that all would be better off. So it's a question whether it is universal basic income.
I did also the microsimulation consultations, and we found out that different subgroups of populations are better off, that people in the first group, first deciles, are better off. Then we find out also the group who are quite poor, but that would be worse off. Of course, we always say that we need to adjust the system. And then also there is not only the question how high the basic income will be, but also how will we introduce it. So if I'm saying we will give all the money basic income, and people like those from those groups can still go to the back social system to get additional help, we don't actually worsen their situation. So that's
in the case if the programs intended for them are not eliminated because of the basic income, just in this case.
Just in this case, of course. And I have to say also that I did changed or replaced only 16 social policy programs for basic income. Well, there were 64 of them, and none of them was connected with social insurance systems. So social insurance system is still intact. Well, so.
Maybe it has to be clear that this new system that Valeria is proposing, it's not requiring additional funds. This is the same amount of funds, just redistributed in different ways.
I mean, when we are saying that it's budget neutral, that's meaning like that we don't require additional money, of course. But still, we are searching for it. Like I said, in eco-dividend, in electricity, and agro-dividend, and there are some kind of funds, even in Europe. So that's my point. We can go further on, but for the first step, it should be enough. And not only that, when they ask me now, if you would get money to give a higher amount of basic income? I would say no, because I'm not sure what consequences basic income will bring. And if we don't play with amount of money on the labor market or in the market, we are safe to see only non-monetarized conclusions or results.
You had one comment. Okay, Ulrich also.
Yeah,
10
very
minutes
short.
left.
I mean, it's not such a question because I'm a fan of your work already, so you don't need to convince me more. But it's more to bring the attention of the audience on this OECD report, because you're really right. I mean, the media coverage was really wrong, and what they say is precisely that, yes, if you make it full, if you replace housing benefits and other stuff, and if you merge this into basic income, then you make poor people poorer. But if you do this, it's okay. And in the French case study of the report, they were actually very close to saying that there was only missing maybe 4 billion euros to finance a partial basic income like this. So actually, the report itself is much more positive than the way the media depicted. But I think the poor media coverage is not an excuse not to do nothing else than this, including pilots.
The first question is, before we introduce basic income, do people, are they divided? Are there people who are very poor, and there are many people who are very rich? And when this scissor is wider, opened, it's not good for society. And it's not the first question, how to finance it. But when you say we don't want a population or people, that this scissor goes wider, if you don't want that, we have to do something. And the question if we can finance it is only some possibility to say it will not go. Therefore, we have provided a financial plan how we can finance it, only because of this question always. And so we have used many bundle or a set of taxes we need for. And these, the Austrian group, I haven't mentioned that, sorry. And we said we want that 90% of people will have improvement in getting money. And we have several financial plans, one which is only 40 pages long and one that's 100 pages long, and now we are working on a very short with pictures and so on, so that everyone can see it can be financed. And we have a set of taxes that means not only for consuming or for ecological things, also for being wealthy, and we said the basic income must be over the poverty threshold, and this threshold, poverty threshold, is told the several countries by EU. And in Austria it's about 1,100 euro. And so we said we want that people have about perhaps 14,000 euro a year. Then they would be above this poverty threshold. and they can be included into society. And it's very, very important that they are not at the threshold and fall, and it's always a fear to fall down, but they should work in society for different aims, and they could live cultural in this society. And so we have done this financial project, and you also can go and say, now I have an amount of money for earning money. I put it into this complex Berechnung, and then it comes out, what will you have when unconditional income is already here. And so it's the easiest form to see how many people will improve their earning.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
will not be, it's divided from earning money now and getting this income. Everyone gets it, and it will not vanish when you are working. You get the money who are working for above. You can have both.
Thank you. So do we still have the time for one more comment? No? Okay. I think we should wrap out. Yeah. Okay.
We will have on the 11th of September, before the International Week of Basic Income, a letter for all our political parties in which we will write why you have a blind area about unconditional basic income. Everybody in Europe, in the world, are speaking about unconditional basic income. Why it is not in your program? So we will go very aggressive and say we have to have it and we want to introduce it. Okay.
Thank you, thank you. So I'm wrapping up the okay, one more and then one more. Okay, but really short one. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, okay, so let's wrap it out and leave it for the discussion afterwards, and we'll drink something, and okay, thank you. So I'm wrapping up the third panel. Thank you for all the presentations and comments, questions, etc.
To be another day for discussion and definitely for smaller panels to discuss concrete outcomes and concrete reasons why to introduce each or different types of experiments or basic income. Is it okay? You're not pleased, I can see you. You want his question? Okay, then one last one, okay. It's very important.
In fact, tomorrow will everybody be here? No. The first issue is this, and secondly, maybe we should have a photo at the end of this meeting all together. Yeah. Yeah. I was expecting there was a half an hour session, analysis and policy proposals. That's why I didn't mention. The point is, you made a presentation and the title was UBI Proposal from Slovenia to Europe. And what you're trying to do is you are trying to convince the politicians to use such a scheme and realize it, or what is the...
This group of people to start thinking about pragmatical solutions.
Okay. No, my point is something separate. My point is the basic income concept should collaborate with other efforts also. I mean, we should couple the efforts of basic income together with the e-democracy. I mean, instead of trying to convince a certain number of politicians, we should concentrate on public awareness campaigns and maybe small jokes, small games. I mean, because politicians do not understand the results of the experiments, etc., etc. They understand the number of votes who are after this. So my point is we should try to figure out the ways how to couple the efforts of basic income with the efforts of e-democracy. It doesn't have to be e-voting, but maybe the awareness part, the marketing part, that part should be supported by such institutions, and that 20 million, for example, if you have such a budget, even for the whole Europe, it's a huge budget. Think with 20 million what you can do in the web environment. Thank you very much.
Income is a good step if the direction is the right one, and when the direction is the right one, when we have a redistribution from the richer to the poor, and you show this with your table for the poorest, but I want to see the deciles for all the other social groups. Yeah, that's the deciles for the poorest. For the most vulnerable, the overall, or the other social groups. I want to know from which deciles the money will come.
Anyway, so we are doing it already. It would be just more successful afterwards. Okay, but also like if we are looking at the steals. Like children from the 10th decile are not from the poor families.
Yeah, that's clear. I just want to have this picture from the other groups. Okay.
You have the chart something for the other part of the population?
I have it. Okay.
So, are we finished? Okay. So, yeah, but can we at least in meaningful fashion finish the event, and then we'll have a group photo and then some refreshments and so on. So exactly. This is what we are going to tell you now. So, thank you very much all for attending this first day out of 3. You are all invited to join tomorrow as well, and on Sunday for the workshop, kind of a creathlon, which is going to be held here as well. And Daniel will explain when it's going to start and what is going to happen. But again, from my side, for this event today, for the expert meeting, you were wonderful. Thank you all. I will not go further with regards and applauses, but I will all invite you to join then later on for a refreshment, and then we'll go together outside for a beer or two.